Electoral integrity remains a critical challenge in Nigeria's democratic journey. Despite various efforts, the country continues to face significant issues such as widespread electoral malpractice, voter intimidation, and a lack of transparency in the management of elections. These problems often lead to disputed results and public distrust in the electoral process, which undermines the legitimacy of the government and weakens democratic institutions. Furthermore, the perceived politicization of the electoral bodies and the prevalence of violence during campaigns and voting periods casts a shadow over the credibility of election outcomes. With these persistent challenges, one must ask what steps are necessary to restore faith in Nigeria's electoral process. How can electoral reform truly address these deep-rooted issues and ensure a system that reflects the will of the people? These are the questions that needs urgent answers as the country strives for a more credible and transparent electoral process. I'm Nta. Welcome to Electoral Reform Half Hour on Nta News24 Abuja. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa with support from MacArthur Foundation. Joining us today is Prince Dr. Chinedu Obi, the Director General of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. With extensive experience in political affairs and inter-party relations, he will provide valuable insights into today's topic, offering an expert perspective on the challenges surrounding electoral integrity and the reforms needed to address them. It's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you, Zenwa. Thank you, Nigerians.
It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, let's just cut the chase straight off. IPAC has made a number of proposals, to the National Assembly. Could you just briefly highlight the key reform issues that you are putting on the table?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. IPAC is the body of all registered political parties in Nigeria, 19 of us. Recently, we met and came together with about 30 inputs that we feel we need to do to deal with the lapses in the 2022 Electoral Act. But before I go into that, you know that after every election, stakeholders come together to look at the lapses that you had in the last election and think about how to make the process better. Everyone is unanimous that the last election didn't really meet up with the stakeholders' expectation. And what we try to do now is to see what can we do to make sure that the next election will be better than the last one. First, we feel that before we talk about even the Electoral Act, there's need for us to look at some critical issues in the Constitution proper. First is, how do we even get the umpire? Today, the umpire is appointed by the executive, and IPAC thinks that should not be the case because the executive sometimes, or most of the times, are participants in the same election. And by the time you appoint the umpire, he who pays the piper usually dictates the tone. And of course, if we can check the experience of the previous elections, directly or indirectly, you can see how such influences had affected it. So we're thinking that there should be a constitutional provision that takes away that power from the executive, maybe something near the recommendation of Uwe's committee to see how it would be a stakeholder thing, get the civil societies involved. Maybe a committee of the National Assembly can, look at the terms and conditions, and then we can have a group other than the executive responsible for that appointment. The other one is also to unbundle INEC itself as an institution to have a particular INEC dealing with issues of election, one dealing with issue of registration, and the other one dealing with issue of election malpractices. And of course, you talked about people losing faith in the electoral system. Part of it is that people don't get satisfied with what happens. So we need to have people who have contributed in marring any of our elections really penalized.
Yeah, I get that. What about putting you, the politicians, on the spot? What you're doing, I don't think you are doing a mirror reflection also about how you as politicians contribute to the challenges. And sometimes I think you're over respected in terms of everywhere that we've gone to is about attitude. If you are talking about INEC, who subverts that process? The politicians. So in your recommendations, did you also do some?
When we talked about penalty is to whosoever is responsible, whether it's the politician or the umpire. The truth is that the average natural human being, if you allow him, would do the wrong thing. What curtails is the processes and procedures that you've put in place to curtail behavior. The natural human being naturally will want to be a deviant, but systems and processes are put in to correct that. That which is why we feel that if we put systems in place that makes it, create a level playing ground to give opportunity for everyone to participate. Now, those are some high points in the constitutional amendment. When we have gone beyond that, we can now talk about the election itself, which are things that we expect to see in the Electoral Act.
The president does not appoint, the president nominates.
By the time you nominate, you already prejudice the system. If you have the opportunity to nominate 3 people and I pick one, it's your appointment. So the president nominates is something we want to do.
So the National Assembly,
the role I would expect the National Assembly to play, maybe a committee of the National Assembly, which of course will be a combination of other parties, with, if you like, set up committee of political parties also that will see through the process. People should be able to apply for that position, and the DSS screens them and present to Nigerians that these persons are
DSS
qualified.
screens now, even now.
That's correct, but we want to be sure that we don't have persons that have particular sentiments for some political parties.
So I saw through the fact that IPAC, these proposals that you took to the National Assembly, the thinking for me is how many of your people endorsed. I know that the big, in quotes, the big parties don't. Are they part of this?
I don't agree with you. The IPAC is 19 political parties. That was what actually started with that preamble. 19 of us. In fact, during the Electoral Committee, Ajia, the Deputy National Woman Leader of the APC, was a member of my committee. So the current IPAC you have, each time we're meeting, 19 of us. Now, even when, for one reason, 1 or 2 are not available, under the code requires that at least half the number of IPAC members should be seated before any action can be taken. But in the particular meeting where we had the position of political parties, it was unanimous. Every party had its input. So the first thing we want to see in the new Electoral Act is to have all the elections done the same day. All the elections the same day. We believe that it will save us issues of cost, logistics. There won't be the bandwagon effect where if you have one election and one particular party wins, the tendency is that in the next election, apart from saving us costs, it's going to have us maintain this multi-political party system rather than this bandwagon effect that is almost turning us into a one-party system. Again, if we have a reason, like in the case of the last election where you have what INEC calls hitches, IPAC is suggesting that if such situation arises, the election should be cancelled and done all over again, so that we don't have a hitch or anybody use discretion to tell us there's a hitch and we give to Nigerians.
No, but the hitch did not affect the voting. It didn't affect, the hitch was transmission of
whatever that means. IREV. Whatever that means, if there's a hitch, IPAC says redo the election. Again, another elephant in the room is you have 14 days when an aggrieved party should file. We are asking that it should be extended to 21 days. And penalty also meted to anybody that frustrates the process. We've seen cases where an aggrieved person approaches INEC, for instance, and takes him almost the whole of the 14 days before he gets facts that he needs certified true copy to be able to go to court.
Prince, I see that you have expert understanding of some of these issues, but let's go to internal party democracy and women's inclusion. What steps is IPAC taking to ensure, because whether you look at the litigations, election litigations, sometimes a plethora of the litigations had to do with what happened pre-election than actually is IPAC on the seat dealing with that challenge?
Yes, part of what we also looked at is that you notice some of the rulings of the different courts, including Supreme Court, had termed certain things pre-election matters, and some of them you are not allowed to even mirror yourself into the processes of another party, which means that a party can actually do the wrong thing, and I have no right as someone from another party to investigate or even interrogate what they've done. We are thinking that the new Electoral Act should give me an opportunity in my party to know what someone in another person did wrong, because it's a process to the same election that all of us are participating. Now, the present IPAC is very gender sensitive. Inclusivity is our watchword. If you notice, recently we formed 3 directorates that never existed before now. One is for women, for youth, and then PWD. The idea is to have an inclusive system where women get a fair share of it. In fact, in the next few days, we'll be having a roundtable. That roundtable is centered on promoting a bill already before the National Assembly on special seats for women. We want to see how we begin to put ideas around pairing positions to ensure that women have their say. Now, the idea of the special seats is that at least even if we go through all the processes, they're unable to get a seat, there could be some reserved to ensure that we have some level of inclusion for women.
You talked earlier about elections happening in one day, and I know that Honorable Ivy in the National Assembly is also a strong promoter of that. But have you considered what are the logistical, measures that will need to be put in place to be able to do that? Because if you've been an election enthusiast, you will notice that logistics has been the biggest nightmare.
That's correct. Logistics, of course, has been the issue, but every problem has a solution. It's just for us to actually think out of the box to get the solution. One of the things we also propose, which is what we deal with some of this, for instance, is total deployment of ICT in the process. ICT would reduce a lot of bottlenecks we have with logistics. We want to see the next Electoral Act talk about total ICT application where you have from registration to voting to collation, so that you can have direct. Of course, we were even starting with rather than what we have in the last experience where INEC was at liberty to choose whether it was going to do transmission. We want it purely compulsory, that transmission of results will be compulsory to the IREF. Then beyond that now is that every process should be electronic, so that we don't have this criminality that happened within the process of collection. You carry out an election at the polling unit, by the time it gets to the ward, the result is now altered. Then gets to the local government, comes with a different result. By the time you get to the final collection center, you discover that the original result has shifted. But if we have an electronic system where you can just print, before we entered the studio, I told you the advantage of forensics. No 2 persons in the world have the same fingerprint.
Yeah.
Once the system recognizes that I have voted anywhere in the world, I'm not allowed to vote again. And you can have total results of persons who have voted for a particular party at the end of points, not waiting, as it were, when we have to wait for some people sit down, conjure some result and come to show us. If you remember the American election, you can't remember any time you've had the body responsible for announcing an election being the one that tells you the outcome of the result. It's usually because it's electronic, you can see the outcome on your own. That's why sometimes it's beamed on CNN, we cannot see it.
We'll go on a short break now. Electoral Reform Hour continues shortly. Stay with us. Glad to have you back with us.
Thanks,
we are still speaking with Prince Dr. Chinedu Obi, Director General, Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC.
Thank you, sir.
To improve electoral integrity, IPAC has called for stricter penalties for those who violate electoral laws. Really? What specific penalties are being proposed, and how do you see this helping to curb electoral malpractice?
We're thinking that the penalties should be stringent, something deterrent enough. Today, you can't find anybody who has been involved in the litany of practices that we all know about that is already in court or even in prison. But if we have serious sentences, not something where you have an option of fine, serious sentences.
Who is going to do this? The National Assembly?
We said, if you remember when I said the need to unbundle INEC, is that we now have a particular electoral offences commission that will be able to deal with this, so that the moment anybody is arrested, the person is in court the next day.
Excellent. But the reason why the Electoral Offences Commission is stalling has to do with the fact that most of the people who will get into trouble with that are people under your supervision, the politicians. And they are the ones who populate the National Assembly.
That's correct. The politicians will be in the commission. The politicians will be the law enforcement agency. Well, the setting up, which is why IPAC is the body of, we are the incubator of the political leaders. We're the ones now saying National Assembly, do this for us. What we want to do is to do the advocacy within our parties, because there are members that are in the National Assembly. And we have very strong conviction that they will be able to do that.
So, reflecting on the 2023, what specific challenges did IPAC identify that prompted some of these proposals that you're dealing with, especially?
We are worried that if you look within the sub-region, there have been cases of military intervention. Why do you have such intervention there? Because maybe the political class have really not done what they need to do. The elections are not as transparent as it were. We believe one of the ways to strengthen our democracy and don't go that part is that we make a process that is quite inclusive, accountable, transparent, so that the persons in Nigeria will believe in the process and believe in the system. So IPAC believe that these proposals that we've made, if they are dutifully applied, should be able to create a system where people believe in it. You will have the level of political apathy you have today. You don't have the kind of disbelief the average Nigerian has. Once the time you talk about election, you have people who say, what votes don't count. We struggle to let people know that vote actually counts. If it doesn't count, people won't be buying it. As you hear that they buy votes. If it doesn't count, politicians won't be jumping up and down. In fact, some of those things are statements that are made to discourage persons to go away so that the process will be easier. So from IPAC perspective, I believe that the things we're trying to do with more advocacy, talking to our leaders in all the respective national assemblies, state assemblies, and so on, we're able to come up with laws that can help us put these things in place.
Now IPAC is well positioned to be able to push these proposals. What other steps are you taking beyond? Are you going to the National Assembly? Are you talking to the political leaders to push in these proposals? That because it's not just good enough to say, you have proposals. You know how it is. You still have to. So what is IPAC?
IPAC is deploying everything it needs to do in terms of lobbying, talking to, like I said, talk to colleagues in the other parties, particularly the ones that have more persons in the National Assembly, the PDP, the APC, the Labour Party, the NNPP, the parties that seem to have more persons in the National Assembly, so that they see the need for us to do this. For us, this is more like a self-survival thing. The democracy has to survive. And if it has to survive, we will need to take those bitter pills, such as doing the right thing, the right time. And let's not forget, one other elephant in the room, which we think we also need to deal with, is we want to see a situation in the new Electoral Act where all cases should be determined before someone is sworn in. We've seen a case where someone gets into power and it begins to influence the system. So we want to see a regime where before you can be sworn in, would have determined all the cases. And of course, we want to also see a situation where not every matter goes to the Supreme Court or goes to our people. We want to see whether
it goes to courts, really, because the American system, there are things that are trashed out of when they see that it is frivolous, they deal with it.
Ideally, because it's struggle for power, sometimes arbitration is unable to deal with it.
And the litigious nature of our people. So what's your take? There's also conversation about diaspora voting. There is conversation around early voting for security agents, civil society, and the media who work in elections.
IPAC is also looking that way because we believe that the issue of vote buying that you have locally, I don't know whether it will be easier to buy votes in the diaspora. And Nigeria has over 20 million Nigerians outside.
Documented or undocumented?
Both documented and undocumented, but assuming we have the documented ones. If you have that number, vote a candidate of their choice. It will go a long way in determining a credible leadership for the country.
Yeah, but if you go to Sudan, or just Sudan alone, you have about 5 billion Nigerians.
Well, any country outside the shores of Nigeria is diaspora, whether they are in the US.
I think we have to be incremental in terms of how we start
maybe
that.
logistics-wise, but if we deploy technology, which is what we're advocating, you can do it simultaneously.
Yeah, Prince, so share your final thoughts. Let's.
My final thought is that we'll
now.
continue to refine the electoral system. The general statement is that the worst democracy is better than any other form of government. So we'll continue to refine the system until we get to where Nigerians will find what we call dividends of democracy.
On this note, we wrap up today's conversation on this episode of Electoral Reform Half Hour, and we wish to specially thank Prince Dr. Chinedu Obi for your time and contributions on the program. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zenwa. Thank you, Nigerians, for having time to see us.
Yeah, so Electoral Reform Half Hour is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with sponsorship from MacArthur Foundation. We are live every Saturday from 8:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. with a repeat broadcast every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. on the same station. You can contact us on our social media handles showing on your TV screen. Thank you very much for watching. I am Ezenwawagu. Thank you for joining us.